with our 4 speakers. The second part will be a Q&A with the audience, which is why we encourage you all to put some of your questions in the chat so that we can be sure to ask our speakers your questions. So thank you for that in advance. At this moment, it is my pleasure to introduce to you all our alumni speakers. They will be sharing more about themselves, but I'll share some basics to start. First of all, we have Vidya Dayarani. Her pronouns are she and her. She's a 2017 graduate of the college who majored in economics and minored in international relations and consumer psychology. She's a strategic finance associate at Uber. She is from Peru. Vidya, you can just wave to the camera so people can see you. Thank you so much. Next, we have Tulani Tabedzi. I apologize. I think I forgot how to pronounce your last name. Apologies. His pronouns are he and him. He is a 2015 undergrad and graduate alum of the engineering school. His major at Penn was mechanical engineering and applied mechanics. He is currently a PhD student of robotics at the University of Nevada and is from the Kingdom of Swaziland. Tulani, thank you for waving. Welcome you two. In just a moment, our student moderators will be asking you all to share more about yourselves. But before we do that, I'd love to reintroduce you all to my lovely colleague, Toys Holmes, our FIGLI program coordinator at the GIC, or the Greenfield Intercultural Center. Toys will be introducing our student moderators. Toys?
Hi, everyone again. It is my pleasure to introduce 2 of these fabulous student leaders that we have in the FIGLI community. First, I want to introduce Erica. About a year ago, Erica was the person who came and wanted to revive iFGLI and actually renamed it iFGLI. I think they went by another name. And so she has been provided wonderful leadership to get support and to continue to have space for international FIGLI students. And the next who will introduce themselves is TG. TG has been another wonderful leader in the FIGLI community, leading what we call Free Tea. It's a weekly get together of FIGLI students on Wednesdays, and she's been doing that since last March. And so I'm happy that they get to have a platform to share and to moderate this conversation. So I'll leave it to them to introduce themselves. First, Erica, and then TG. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. It's too good to see you all here. My name is Erika Treviño. I am originally from Mexico, and I am a junior in the college majoring in mathematical economics. And yeah, as Toys mentioned, I am the founder, or like the person who is trying to revive iFGLI. And this is just like a student organization that tries to foster a community for international FIGLIs. You know, I think it was a necessity in the past because I have some friends that are just domestic FIGLIs and other friends who are just internationals, but they are not necessarily international FIGLIs. So there were some questions that I used to have that they couldn't answer, or like I was living through some specific experiences that they couldn't really help me with because they were not in my shoes. So I think just having this community is a perfect way to bond with other people and to get like the support from others that we can. And yeah, TG, you wanna go next?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Erica, for that wonderful introduction about iFGLI. And I'm also a member of iFGLI. And my name is TG. It's like the letters Tina G. And I use the pronouns she, her, hers. I'm a junior in nursing. And overall, I'm also involved with the GIC, as Toys mentioned, with the Fruit Tea program. So I'm the coordinator of this inclusive safe space for FIGLI and FIGLI adjacent individuals who want to engage in organic conversations and explore various aspects of our identities together. And now that we're done, I'll leave it back to Toys.
Wonderful. Thank you both for those introductions. And I think with that, we can get started. Go ahead, Erica.
Perfect. So yeah, I'm gonna start with the first question. We're really excited to be here and to hear about the stories and experiences from Vidya and Tulani. So the first question would be, could you briefly describe your journey from Penn to where you are today? You can feel free to describe or discuss your FIGLI/iFGLI experiences. So Vidya, we'll start with you.
Sure. So as mentioned, I graduated from Penn in 2017, and I'm originally from Lima, from Peru. So right after Penn, I actually spent a year in New York working in consulting. I'm sure all of you know about it, but as I was in STEM, I only had 1 year in my F1 visa. I don't know if this is too specific, but hopefully it'll be helpful for some people. So I spent a year in New York working on that. After that, I had to get into the H-1B lottery, did not get it. So I ended up going back home to Peru for about 1.5 years, which was definitely interesting. I had really hoped to stay in the US, but some visa things are definitely out of hand. So when I went back home to Peru, I really wanted to find a way to come back to the US. So which is why one of the reasons I decided to start working at Uber, as I knew like obviously they were like a global brand, they could potentially move me around. So I worked in Lima for like 1.5 years. And after that, I started like networking and looking at different roles open. And I was able to get Uber to transfer me to the US, which is where I've been in San Francisco for the past year, working in finance.
Thank you so much for sharing. Tulani, you wanna go?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. So yeah, I graduated in 2015, but my path was a little bit different. So I started doing research in my junior year. So when I graduated, I already had a very good background with one of the professors there. I still call him my mentor now. I listen to his meetings even when I can with Zoom, which is kind of nice. But yeah, when I graduated, there's a project we're working on, and so he was very happy to keep me on as I was looking for jobs. So I stayed there, and that year turned into 3 years. So I was in GRASP for 3 years until my extended OPT expired. And then after that, I didn't really plan to do a PhD because, as an international student and as a first generation student, no one really tells you how to plan things. So I think right before my OPT ran out, that's when I started thinking about grad school. I mean, I was already enjoying research, but I wasn't really thinking about it effectively. So that's when I rushed. Maybe the last month before I left, that's when I took my my GREs, and then I went home for 6 months. And then when I was home, I started actually applying for PhD programs. And at that time, I was able to get into Nevada. But maybe one of the things to highlight, as I guess as we're trying to build these communities, that it's important to sort of like ask for mentorship for people around you, because I actually didn't really know about that, and I couldn't apply to a lot of schools because I didn't actually have most of the money because I didn't save when I was there. So I think that's maybe it will come out in some of the questions, but I just want to put that out there. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much, Tulani and Vidya, for sharing experiences. And just a reminder for our audience, please feel free to enter any of your thoughts or questions into the chat box, and we will consolidate them in the end so that we can ask our speakers about in an interactive Q&A session about your questions. And Tulani, you said you graduated in 2015 with a degree in mechanical engineering and applied mechanics. And with your experiences as both as an undergrad and now as a grad student, can you elaborate more on the struggles you faced while at Penn or in other institutions, I guess?
Yeah, so I think struggles, I don't know how to address it. But I think, Penn is a very big school, but the community is very tight-knit. So if you reach out to people, you will definitely get help. As I said, I consider my advisor, he gave me great advice. He still does if I have issues right now. So when I go and I don't understand what I'm supposed to do with this PhD and advisor issues, he's always happy to help. And there is also undergraduate advisor that I had as well, who was very supportive in this regard. But I think maybe the biggest one for me was financial. When I came, I didn't really understand what cold was. I think I came with a pullover. And so when I was working at SFS, my advisor, my boss was asking me if I have cold clothes. And I was like, no, I don't. Oh, I said I do because I have a pullover. And I was like, girl, you need a very, very heavy coat. But then he was very supportive and was able to give me an advance to go and buy sort of cold or coats. And those things, I couldn't have planned for that for some reason. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest struggles. And then apart from that, I think I had a very good time. And then as a researcher as well, I think I had a very good time.
Thank you for sharing, Tulani. It's great to know that you were able to find someone to support you through your journey at Penn. And I think since I lived in Kuwait most of my life, I also struggled with the concept of what clothes should I bring over here? And in the end, I also bought a coat, I guess in Philly to kind of counter the cold weather. And I guess for Vidya, do you also want to share more about your experiences while at Penn? I know that you graduated in 2017 with a degree in economics, and would that maybe also have its own unique struggles?
Yeah, for sure. So I think similarly, I think one of the biggest struggles, the things that I had to navigate, for me, I think it was two. One was academic for sure. I think maybe not so because I'm international, but just because of my own experiences. I think in high school, if I studied hard, if I did my homework, I could just go to the exam and I knew what I was doing and I would do well. And I think going to Penn, I realized I was not enough. And that was a really big shock for me. And it sounds a little like, oh, I didn't just like fly through high school, but I knew how to study and I knew what I needed to do to do well. And I think especially my first year at college, it was almost like a first year, like definitely like a ego clash where I was like, oh, am I not as smart as I thought? Or am I not as hardworking? Like where's the gap? And also just trying to understand how, like what I need to do to get good grades. So I think the good thing was like Penn does have a lot of resources that I think at first I was hesitant to take on, but they have so many like free like tutorings. I know they have especially for a few classes that I took, and at first I was like, I've never had a tutor in my life, like, but it was important and it was useful. Obviously going to my friends, going to office hours, things like that were super useful. So I definitely recommend all of you, if you're struggling or if you feel like you want more help, definitely take on those resources. And I think secondly, I would say the mentorship part. Obviously my parents heading on to college, heading on basically to a US college, and they didn't know what to expect. They couldn't answer many of the questions that I had of like, how do I make friends or what club do I join or what's good for my career. So I think definitely finding mentors, both formally through like mentorship programs and also just informally through like friends, siblings, or anything like that, definitely gave me some perspective that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Thank you for sharing, Vidya. Yeah, definitely mentorship is like, I guess, a central topic for iFGLIs. And yeah, Weingarten does have a lot of resources. So thank you for touching on that as well. And I move it back to Erica.
Sure. Yeah, it's really impressive how much I can relate to your experiences right now. Like, I want to be a researcher in the future, but I also I struggle at the beginning with my grades and all that stuff. But yeah, Penn has a lot of resources that we should all use. So, okay, the next question, I think, Vidya, you started talking about how you went back to Peru and then you came back to the US. So why did you decide to stay in the US? We can start with you, Vidya, and then we'll back to Lenny.
For sure. So I think for me, it was kind of just like, I always wanted to. I think when I came to the US, my parents definitely wanted me to stay in the US. There's so many more opportunities than there are in Peru. They were, and I was as well, I think, when I came to study in Philly, for me at least, I was like, I really want to make the most of it and stay as long as I can. And really just get, even if I do end up going back to Peru, like get that experience that will really push me, like my resume forward when I go back home and say like, oh, I work in the US. So I think for me, it was like, I kind of always knew I wanted to. And it was definitely like a professional goal for me to be able to work here. And recruiting was stressful. I don't know if any of you, like what year you were at Penn, but definitely some of the most stressful times. But when I got a job there, I didn't want to take it. And then I moved back home because of like visa stuff, not getting my H-1B at the time. And then after that, I think it was really interesting. And I don't know if this is relevant for any of you, but if this is something that eventually happens to you, for me at least, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I remember dreading going back home after 5 years and being like, oh my God, it's going to be such a cultural clash. I'm used to being independent, all these things. I'm going back to my parents' house where they're very strict, where there's obviously limited opportunities and so on. But it ended up being much better than I expected. I think all my friends had also grown up, and even though I hadn't seen them in a while, many of them were in different like stages of life, but many of them are very, like people I could definitely relate to as well. So I actually had a really good time in the year and a half in Peru. But I think I still wanted to come back to the States if I could, just to get that exposure, get that experiences, have those opportunities, which is why I ended up trying and eventually getting transferred here.
Thank you for sharing. It's good to know that. Tulani, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Actually, like no one in my communities ever went to college or left Swaziland before I came here. So everything was sort of like high unknown when I got here the first place. I remember the first time I was able to call home because in my parents' view and one of my siblings, it was like, you know, as you go, you will never hear your voice until you come back. But when I was able to call, they were so happy, you know, asking about time zones and everything. It's like, oh, are they actually soils and trees there? So it was a lot of like an exotic experience. But I think, you know, after being here, like, you know, and also being in research, I sort of saw the opportunities that research can provide. I remember putting a plug with Penn and all the entrepreneurial push that they have. They have Penn Health Tech, for instance. So basically just try to push all the technology outside of research and actually out and make a sort of impact in the world. So after staying in research for that time, I saw what the potential research can do in developing communities. And I feel like, the best place to be is actually in the US to sort of get all the training for that. So I was lucky to be involved with a startup when I was there. And I think, the interdisciplinary nature of Penn is like second to none. I was able to form a startup with 2 guys from medical students, 1 MBA. And you see that basically sort of showed me exactly what the potential was. So after that, I mean, they still don't understand for the most part what I do. My family, because they think that I work with traffic lights. In Swaziland, those are robots, but someday I hope they will, in terms of the technology that we can sort of bring in improving that. And I think that became even more clear when I spent 6 months there to see what kind of impact I think I can make with the Penn education and the background that I had acquired at the time.
It's great that you want to make an impact. That's really, really nice. Thank you. Yeah, TJ is going to ask the next question.
Right. Yeah, thank you all for sharing. And it seems like from our stories, it seems like our extended family or our immediate family are all in our respective, countries. And I'm kind of curious, how did you, try to kind of convince your parents, or was there any convincing that needed to be done for y'all to stay in the US and to develop further in the US? We can start with Zulani.
Sure. Well, there was kind of convincing that was supposed to happen, because they didn't really understand in the first place why I was here for such a long time. Also, almost all my peers, they graduated well before I was still in school. So it didn't make sense why I'm still here. But I think I basically make the same point that, I can go home now and support them and be happy. But I think for me, I'm trying to do a bigger impact than that. And I think the best place for me to get the resources and network that to sort of push me forward, this is the best place to be.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Similarly, with your experience, I do feel like the US has more opportunities. Hopefully I can also talk with my parents about that. Thank you for sharing. And how about Vidya?
I think it's pretty similar with my parents. Once after college, I think it wasn't that hard for me, at least. They definitely wanted me to take every opportunity I got. They were like, we would love to have you home, but definitely take all the opportunities that are given to you. If Penn helps you get a job there and you're able to have a job, obviously it will be much higher paying than in Peru. Take it and learn, and whenever you want to come back, obviously you can, and you'll just have a much better resume and have more opportunities back home. For me, it didn't take too much convincing. When I came back to the US, though, that maybe took a little more convincing, because they were like, oh, you have a job here, you're happy, you're doing well, why do you want to go back? But I think just reminding them, so many more opportunities are here, which are really hard to explain to someone who hasn't necessarily spent a lot of time here. All the things that you can learn and bring back home, and that you're not leaving them completely, right? You're always in touch with them. Definitely continuous contact with my family has been very helpful for me, and also for them, just knowing that I'm fine, that I'm doing well, that I'm happy. I think those are just a few things that sometimes they worry about, but it's just good to remind them.
Yeah, I also identify with calling my family quite frequently, every day, to kind of see what they're doing, and for them to also know how my life is going. Thank you all for sharing, and I'll move it back to Erica.
Yeah, same here. My parents always want me to call them and just have Zoom meetings, because I know how to use Zoom now. I taught them during the pandemic, so it's yeah. Well, I think some of you mentioned a little bit about the work visa, and yeah, as an international student, I don't know what's gonna happen after college. How is the process like? I have no idea. So if you can explain a little bit of that. I don't know if it is different when you get into a PhD. I think you get a student visa. I don't know. Maybe you can explain that better. But this time we're gonna start with Vidya.
Sure. So I think it's great, because I think Tolani and I will both have different experiences. So I was not a STEM major. If you're considering, definitely consider that into play, because if you're STEM, you get 3 years post-college of being able to use your student visa to work. Non-STEM, you get 1. Just something to think about. So I was an econ major, and the way it works is that in your last year of college, you apply for your OPT, and which is part of your student visa, and you get a year card that allows you to work anywhere as long as you have a job. So during recruiting, I know this is maybe like too specific, but I think it's still helpful for you to know, like, do it as early as possible. It takes a really long time. They say it takes 3 months to process. I think now it's taking longer. So just something to think about. Let's say if you're starting work in August, make sure you at least have 3 months because you cannot start work without that card. So yes, I worked on that for a year, and then after that, most companies, I mean not most, but like large companies who recruit at Penn will sponsor your visa, which means that they will do the paperwork for you to apply to an H-1B, which is a more long-term, not student-dependent work visa. And the only caveat there is that it's like literally a lottery. So your company can apply for your sponsorship, and that's great. That's like a huge plus. But then I think it's like a 1 in 3 chance on average that you will get it. So some of my peers got it, I didn't, which is why I ended up going back home. But it's something to think about, and I know it's really stressful. I think the uncertainty can definitely just add to the stress of like not even just knowing that you're gonna get a job, but like where will you be? But just know that things work out, and it's not the end of the world if you're not in the city you really wanted to be in. And then just and after Peru, I came to the US on a transfer visa, which is something that's available to big companies that have offices in many different countries, where they can easily just, if you've been worked with them for a year, they can transfer you to another office quite easily. And there's not a lottery, which is really nice.
That's nice. Yeah, I didn't know about the lottery, but it's good to know. Thank you. Tulani?
Yeah, as Vidya said, you definitely do need to start applying a little bit early. So everyone gets the 1 year OPT experience after graduation. So I got that, but you do need to get a job within 3 months. Otherwise, your privileges go away. But I was already in research, so for me, that wasn't really a problem. It was a matter of getting the OPT and then actually starting working. It's important to know that you can't really start working until the date that you indicated on your OPT. Otherwise, a lot of people are going to be mad at you. And then if you are in STEM, then you are able to extend it. Actually, I think during when I did it, the first time that they extended it from 17 months to 24 months. So now you get an extra 2 years if you are doing a job that is related to your field. The only thing is that you have to fill out a study plan, they call it, basically showing or have some goals, like how this is going to be helping you with your training kind of thing. So if you have an employer, they generally are happy to help you with that. And then if you're lucky and if you're in education, they can actually apply for H-1B for you, because I think it actually is not included in the education, or into the lottery rather. So, but then I was in research, and so research works on grants. So it was never really, because they have to guarantee that they can pay your salary for 3 years. And that wasn't really a thing. So after my OPT ran out, I then went back to Swaziland, and now I'm back on as F1 student visa.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, TG.
Yeah, sure. So now I guess we're going to kind of move our perspective into more of the iFGLI experience. And since a lot of us do have financial struggles, I guess, with our families or just like with our background in general, do y'all have any advice for iFGLI students right now related to personal finances during or after college? And we'll start with Tulani.
Save. Save. I think that's the most I can give. I think for me, I never really had someone to tell me that, so everything was sort of like, you learn on the fly, because you never really know where you're going to end up. And I think as an international student, you don't for the most part have somewhere where you can land and say, sort of gather your thoughts and figure out what to do next. You have to always have everything almost in place. But as I said, I was lucky. So as a research assistant, it didn't pay that much, but I think my advisor actually built a very good relationship, because I told him at the time that, I can't afford to pay rent without you paying me, but I really want to do research. So what do we do? And he's like, oh yeah, we'll figure out what the grant can, and then we sort of move things around, and he was able to raise my salary so that I was able to pay when I started doing that. So I think it's important to sort of let the people around you know where you are, if you are comfortable, because for the most part, they will be able to help you in this journey. And as I mentioned briefly, because I didn't save, I also did not have enough money to apply to all the schools that I wanted to. So that was kind of a big limitation. And someone might not really know that no, applications cost money, because you just think you just send applications and you're fine, but it does cost a lot of money. And for different schools, it's something that you cannot do that. You cannot sort of ignore that amount of money. But yeah, so save and try to reach out to the people around you so that they can give you an idea, especially if you know what you want to do. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, mentorship is like a essential theme, and being transparent is also a very good thing to talk about. Thank you, Talani. And we'll move that conversation to Vidya.
I think that's have very similar advice. I think especially in college, so getting an on-campus job, I think is super useful, not just obviously like financially, but I think it also, to me at least, just gave me a little more independence. Like there were, like, my parents were sending me some money to, you know, day-to-day stuff, but I felt really strange asking them for like, oh, I want to get dinner for a friend's birthday or something like that. So for those kind of things that I was not going to be asking them for that, having an on-campus job or some other source of income definitely was helpful. And I would say, yeah, also just like saving, like budgeting, and like just being conscious that you don't have to go everywhere just because everyone's going to. You don't have to just like spend money for no reason. I think it's very useful both in college and post college. Like there will always be distractions, there will always be things, everyone doing things. But just really think about what you enjoy or what will be useful to you. I think some of the, yeah, so I think my advice would be like try to save as much as you can. Even if it's not a lot, I think it just makes you feel like you're making progress for your future. And budgeting and just like really looking at your finances, I think is helpful. I think we can often get so engrossed in our day-to-day of like, oh, I need to spend this, I need to buy this, or whatever it is. But then when you really see it on paper, you're like, did I really need to? So I would say just budgeting and planning it accordingly is helpful for sure.
Thank you for sharing. And then sometimes I have conversations like these with my friends as well. And some other tips I heard about is like maybe just like bringing your own lunch to a picnic outside instead of being pressured to like buy the restaurant food that may be quite expensive for that day. So I feel like just really being transparent and also thinking of like creative ways to do things with your friends that don't always cost money could be a really good way to socialize and also be on a budget. And I'll move that back to Erica.
Yeah, no, definitely. While I've been here, I've been having like a work study, which is like really, really helpful because as Vidya was mentioning, like I can ask my parents, oh, I need some money, but of course, like also changing the currency. Like if I ask them like to go out for dinner, it will be like the meal for like 5 people in Mexico, you know, what I will be spending here. So it's a lot of money. So yeah, definitely like start working early if you can, like, and if you have time. It's also like, it helped me a lot to like get used to the university life and like to the American culture because it's, you know, it's different. Like I wanted to hug my boss when she helped me or things like that, but you don't do that here. I mean, I don't know if you do that in Mexico, but yeah, there are like other like cultural shocks that I experienced during my work study. But yeah, I will ask another question, which is, do you want to go back to your home country at some point in the future? I think Chilani mentioned that you wanted to make an impact. So do you plan on doing that like while you are in the US, or you want to go back? This is something that I've been thinking about. So I would love to hear your perspective of you both.
Sure. Maybe I'll start saying that, you know, I am a Penn alumni interviewer, so all the alumni out there, you should definitely consider doing that. So for me, as I was talking about impact, you know, that's one sort of way to share my experiences with people from Southern Africa or Swaziland that apply to the United States, especially Penn, because it is an esoteric sort of place, and a lot of people don't really know about it. But I definitely plan to go back home, and I think for me right now it's a matter of figuring out when to go back and when the most impact I can actually do is. Because as I said, you know, I think we in terms of healthcare, we lack a lot of resources. You can go there and go struggling with everyone, but I think when you go in and you have some either entrepreneurial ideas, sort of help build that or research things that you can implement here, I think that's what I'm looking forward to do. So basically, I am actively looking at potential entrepreneurial startups, and that's why Penn Health Tech and all the entrepreneurial spirit that Penn provides. You know, I think there's a lot of competitions, business competition that Penn provides. And for me, that was training to sort of for the future that has been very valuable.
Well, sounds like a wonderful plan. Yeah, Vidya, you wanna tell us a little bit about your perspective?
I think I would want to stay here just because there are more opportunities. I think I have more things I can do, and definitely higher paying jobs since I can send back home and so on. But I think I also want to be connected to my home country, and I think there are many ways to do that. So I'm very connected to like my high school, like do a lot of mentorship for like students there. I definitely want to like go back into some sort of like social service there, but I think I would want to try to do it from here. I have a lot of friends there, so I think it's very easy to do it remotely for me. But just from my personal experience, I want to stay here, but definitely stay connected somehow in many different ways.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I have a lot of friends, like international friends, who also want to stay here just to keep connections, and also like they have more opportunity for growing here. So it's good to hear that. Thank you for sharing. TG?
Yes, yeah, I also agree that I would also like to also stay here, but with all the obstacles, but hopefully we'll take it step by step. And we're just a gentle reminder that if you have any questions, please send it in the chat so that we can consolidate them and then ask our speakers in the end. And last but not least, before we move on to the Q&A section, I would like to ask about how has your Penn network helped you in your career so far? So I guess we have touched on several topics, but it would be great to kind of elaborate on them a bit more. And we can start with Vidya.
Of course, and I would say a lot. I think I love talking about this because I just had such a good experience with Alumni Network. Let me think like where do I even start? I think firstly, even just at Penn, I remember when I was starting to recruit for jobs, or like I think my junior year or so on, I really wanted to understand like obviously you have all these like recruiting events, right? And whatever you're networking, you're asking, like making small talk, all this stuff. But I really wanted to understand better like what was really going on as a Peruvian, like other Peruvian students, how did they get jobs, what was their experience like, and so on. And like while at Penn, I remember just reaching out to like there are a lot of like there. I think I feel, at least for me, for Peru, there are a lot of more Peruvians doing MBAs or grad school at Penn than undergrad. So I just reached out to them. Like you can find them pretty easily. So just email them, being like, hey, I'm Peruvian, you're Peruvian, you're doing an MBA, so you definitely like you're older than me, you have more experience. Can I just talk to you? And they would meet me for coffee or just like chat somewhere. And they were super helpful. Like they gave me really good advice. They would often, if I was applying to a job with their company, they would be like, oh, like I'll refer you, or I'll like try to push you forward, or things like that, or just gave me advice in general about what the corporate world was like. So that was really helpful. Then my first 2 summers at Penn, I went back home and I interned there. And one of the internships, again, I got it from an alumni. So I knew I was going back home my sophomore summer. I didn't want to use my OPT yet. And I was like, okay, like, let's see what's happening. So I emailed a lot of Penn alums in Peru, explaining who I was, what I was doing, that it was technically my first really big, like, serious internship. And they were super nice. Like, I think obviously not everybody will respond, but the alumni network is amazing. And they responded pretty easily. And they were like, yeah, like when you get to Peru, we can chat and see what there is. And I was like, okay, I'm trying to like secure internship before I get home. So they were like, okay, we'll just like do it over video call. So I think in that sense, they've been really helpful. And then in San Francisco, I mean, everybody came here with a job, so I didn't have to worry about that. But I've been very connected to the alumni network here. I haven't used it myself, but I think it just goes to show how strong we are. Especially with COVID, a lot of people in SF were losing jobs or were worried about potentially losing their job. And the Penn Club of SF built this Google Sheet where all the alumni here wrote where they worked, their email, and like the link to the job postings of their company. So anybody from Penn here could open the Google Sheet and let's say I work at Uber, and they were interested in a job at Uber. They could find my email there, email me, and I could help refer them. Even though I didn't know them, like they were Penn alumni. I felt confident doing that, and it was incredible. Like I just seeing that list of people being like, I can refer whoever wants to. I think just goes to show that if you really want help, there's a lot of people here who are willing to help you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that video. I didn't know that there was a list like that going on, but that is really helpful during this time, and it will be a great resource for like maybe even senior iFGLI students or junior iFGLI students thinking about career development and all that good stuff. And I'm glad that you could have that strong support in the Penn community. And how about Tilani? Can you tell us your story?
Yeah, sure. So I think there is a database called QuakerNet where all the alums have their information. So that was very helpful for me because as a mechanical engineer, it's kind of a very broad field. You can go anywhere. And I think sometimes you don't really know what to expect when to get to that field. So for me, I reached out to a lot of Penn alums whether it was in the aerospace or medical device companies, just trying to find out how their experience was there. And for the most part, most of the people were very, very supportive. And of course, they weren't necessarily giving jobs per se, but I think getting that advice and sort of saying, if you want more time, we can always schedule this weekly or something like this. And I was like very surprised. And then in terms of my research experience, basically, I think when I was looking for PhD programs, almost the professors that I had interviews with is because I had either a TA or someone that I had interacted with from Penn. And so they were like, oh yeah, you should reach out to this professor. He might be doing something that I'm interested in. And that like sort of put me that sort of foot into the door, figuring out exactly what you want to do and having those face-to-face with the different professors. And basically going around in conferences now, there's like Penn roboticists and engineers everywhere. And it's always nice to get in touch with them. But yeah, I think those are the most sort of impact that I've had from alum. But everyone is very open to helping. And I said with the alumni interview network as well, you get to meet a lot of people that are in and around your area, sort of interested in talking about what they're doing and how they're keeping up. So.
Thank you so much for sharing, Tulani. And now that we have some prepared questions, now we will incorporate the audience Q&As. And I'll let Erica ask the first one.
Sure, I think I saw one from Valerie. I'm just trying to find it on the chat because she asked it like at the beginning. Okay, yeah. Can the speaker speak about strategies for building a network? How crucial was creating a network? How crucial has creating a network been to you? I think you already talked a little bit about this, but I would love to hear like, was it easy like from the beginning? Because it sounds like, oh yeah, I started like reaching out to people and like meeting others and then talking to professors, but like, I think it can be a little bit intimidating. So how did you manage that? Like, do you have any cultural shocks while doing that? Like something that you learned that, oh, I shouldn't have done this, but I did it and now I won't do it again. Yeah, I would love to hear that.
I can go first, I guess. I think my two pieces of advice, and I learned them both as I've like tried to network when I was a student and now a little bit when people try to reach out to me now. I would say do it in advance. So don't just do it when you're looking for a job or for a next opportunity. I think like for me, for example, I started networking, if you want to call it that, like sophomore year when I wasn't necessarily looking for something super big at that time. So I think just building those networks when you don't need something from them, I think is super valuable. So just speaking to like other students or professors or whoever it is and being like, I'm really interested in what you're doing. I really just want to learn more. And then they love to tell you about them. And then like, I think that just helps. So when you do need or when they can help you, they already know you and they know that you didn't just email them and 50 other people at once being like, I want a job. So I think that's useful. Like do it in advance. Don't just do it when you need it. And something that I even tell myself right now, like, even though I'm not necessarily looking to switch jobs, I should just reach out to people and see what's there and like make connections. So if I ever need to, I have it. And if I don't need to, I made a new friend. And I think secondly, what I was gonna say, there's so many opportunities to do it. So I would do it informally, like at least I had a good experience doing it informally, like reaching out to people from like email and like Quakernet and all of that. There are also many chances to add Penn to network, whether it's like through events, through programs. I remember when I was there was this mentorship program with grad students, or different things like that. I think reaching out to people, just being interested in their work is helpful, and also just keeping in touch. I think that's something that I would miss. Like I'll reach out to them once, and then a year later I'll be like, oh, that person, I should like ask them again, and it's like, well, they probably forgot me. So trying to just keep those connections, these the ones you really care about, the ones that you think are valuable, that you enjoy speaking to as well. Maybe it's just a quick email like, happy holidays, I know we met a few months ago, but like I still remember you. I think it's useful just because people will forget. And if you really care about this relationship, you will want to keep up with them, and people appreciate that.
I didn't know that. I was like sending them emails like, oh, Merry Christmas or things like that. Happy holidays. Yeah, to let you know.
I think Vidya mentioned most of it. I think it's important to reach out when you actually don't need anything. I think for me, for research, for instance, I think I was late to get into it because I thought maybe you needed to like you need a special skills. You need to have the skills before actually moving into trying to do research. But that's not really how it works. If you reach out to these professors either after class or during dissertations, they are always almost looking for new people that they can mentor. So I think, getting that courage, I know it was a little bit hard from my background, but, you have to get that little bit of courage to go and ask people and show genuine interest in what they're doing. And I assure you that they are almost always willing to help. And I think after having been at Penn for 3 years after graduation, we had freshman year that had zero engineering background or robotics background come in and say, I'm interested in robotics, I want to learn. And I was like, oh yeah, we'll show you how to do that. And I think having that sort of courage to do that in the beginning is very important. So just be interested in what people are doing and actually show up, go and ask that in the beginning. But yeah, and then do keep in touch. I think that's very, very important because you never know. As for the academic route, you will need recommendations in the future, whether for your PhD or whatnot. And if you have a professor that had a really good relationship and then you sort of just fell off the cliff, and then you resurface after 1.5 years or 3 years, like, okay, I'm trying to apply, and it's like, oh, I don't know who you are anymore, kind of thing. So it's important to keep in touch.
Okay, it's important to keep in touch. That's the thing I'm gonna get from this too. But yeah, T, you wanna continue with the
Yes,
audience
sure.
questions?
I'll do that. So another question we have is, how can non-iFGLI students support iFGLI students? So I guess there's like a few many, I guess, supporters of iFGLI students in our audience. And I'm curious about maybe what struggles you had that you felt you could receive more support on from maybe non-iFGLI individuals. And then we'll start with Tulani.
Oh, that's a good one. I think Penn generally has a lot of resources, but I was just very shy to go and ask. I think I don't know if this is like what I quickly can help with, but just being proactive and having the courage to go and ask for help. Maybe if I had a community of people that I know they are in the same boat, that might have helped. Because it's very common that you feel like you are facing this problem by yourself, and therefore you just have to fight muddle through by yourself. And then the moment you start speaking to friends, like, oh yeah, it's not really specific to international students or engineering students, it's actually everywhere. I don't know how you can sort of broadcast those sort of information, but for me, I think I just tend to fight it by myself until really late and like, oh, I didn't realize there was a resource. I could have asked like a year ago and I would have gotten the assistance that I needed.
Yeah, I guess like maybe just, you feel like maybe creating websites that are easier to access and to just like easier to access information on how we can receive support would have been a good solution?
Yes.
Okay, for clarifying that. And how about you, Vidya? Do you have any thoughts on this question?
I think definitely echo what Tulani was mentioning. I think there's so many resources at Penn. So just like being able to like maybe compile them all in one place, or maybe not all, but the useful ones, the really most important ones. Or yeah, I think just helping normalize them. I think especially like in my first year at Penn, I was a little hesitant to like reach out to like getting tutoring or like going to certain resources and so on. So just talking about them, I think helps people feel more comfortable using them. Would be one thing. And then I think for like non-iFGLI students, I think just listening. I remember like I was talking to some friends in college and they were like, they were not international. So that was just like the difference I was talking about. And I was talking something about like, oh yeah, I want to study abroad. I need a visa. And they were like, a what? Because they just hadn't had to do that before. So, and I think that was such a big part of my like concern constantly, like my visa status, like what is happening and so on. So I think just listening to your friends, like hearing out like what situations they may be in that you may not relate to, but just being open to that and supporting them is really like useful, and we just feel really good.
Definitely agree with like contemplating about like the future and then thinking so much into the future that you just get stressed out. But yeah, it's good to have like a safe space where you can discuss about these concerns, and just like talking about the resources can really help. Thank you for those suggestions. I'll move it back to Erica.
Yeah, no, thank you for all your suggestions. Really appreciate them. One question that I think a lot of us have really think about, do you experience imposter syndrome, and how do you manage it? If you do, or if you have. Tulani, you want to go first?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Because I think So having been to Penn and you go to a different school, I think they almost expect you to do like magic because you went to Penn. So I think I do feel that a lot. But what I usually do is, I do have as I said, some mentors that I talk to about it, and they were like, yeah, it's common for PhD students to have that sort of like out of shell experience, like, what am I doing here? Am I really meant to be here? And am I going to make an impact at all? So basically, it's just talking it out with the people around you. And then I think there are a few sort of friends that are like sort of my benchmark, and they will say the same things, like, you have done these things in the past, so there's no way it's not you. Just this is like a temporary feeling or whatever, like sort of a rampage that you're going through. Because now, if you have a very strong network of friends, you might not be feeling this or sort of experiencing this at the same time, so they'll be able to give you that sort of support system. So yeah, I just reach out and talk to people about it.
Yeah, definitely talking to people is a good way to just like get over it and continue with your life. Vidya, you have something to say?
Pretty similar. I'll say two things. I think one of them is having candid conversations. I think I remember at Penn, my freshman year again, the biggest culture shock, I think. I remember talking to people and they would be like, oh yeah, like when I like this is what I want to internship, where I want to intern to Penn. We were freshmen here, right? Just for context. And then they were like, in post Penn, and I want to do this job in this city. And I remember just thinking like, oh my God, like everyone already has their life in order. Like I'm still like figuring it out. And I remember like, having these thoughts constantly, like, oh my God, everybody knows exactly what they're doing. And then as I got to know those people better, and then as time passed, I realized like they really didn't. Like this is what they wanted to do, and like maybe they would, but we all kind of like when someone asks us like, what do you want to do? We give them an answer, and like that's valid, and maybe it's true. But I think it's having more like open, really candid, vulnerable conversations. You realize that most people don't have their lives together, not fully at least. And I think that makes you feel like less of like imposter syndrome as you realize everybody's in the same boat. And I think the second thing I would say is really like remind yourself of your wins. Like think about like what you did before Penn or what you're doing at college, like whether it's classes, clubs, anything else. Sometimes we forget, but I think reminding yourself of that realizes like makes you realize that you're meant to be here, you're qualified. You might not have everything perfect, but you've definitely like achieved many things and deserve to be there.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it was definitely like a shock to see how people were trying to search internships like the first semester. It was crazy. I remember that experience, and I keep telling my friends about that when I go back home. But yeah, T, you wanna go?
Right, sure. So I think our time is almost coming to an end, and some of our attendees may also have submitted questions before during the program. And even though unfortunately we may not go all over them today, the conversation can definitely continue on PennFLASH. And I'm kind of curious for Vidya and Tigani, are you okay if participants of this call do contact you on PennFLASH if they have follow-up questions?
Yeah, of course. I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank you so much. That'll be awesome. I know a lot of us learned so much from your experiences, and it would be great to maybe just like flesh out the specifics with you in a follow-up question. And this last question, we're going to ask about how does your, I guess, challenges that you faced during the pandemic as a first-gen professional shapes, I guess, you right now as your identity? We'll start with BDF first.
Sure. So I think it's definitely been challenging. I think there's just so much more uncertainties. And I feel like, at least I personally feel like so much more at stake. Like I definitely wasn't able to go back home during the pandemic, but just hearing about how bad the situation was there made me feel like really privileged. Like I'm sitting here, like I'm working from home. I don't have like a huge risk. I still have my job, which is I'm so lucky to have all these things. And then like thinking about people back home, some people are losing their jobs, they need to work outside. They can now work from home, all these different things. Definitely gave me a lot of perspective. And just reminding myself like why I do what I do, how I want to help other people and so on. So I think just like realizing how lucky you are to be in the situation was definitely something I learned from the pandemic. And then also just I think it's giving me an opportunity to think about what else I want to do. So with all this free time, or like somewhat free time, whether it was like taking online courses on Coursera, there's so many free ones available, was like something I started doing, volunteering a bit more online, things like that. So just really thinking, I think it helped me think beyond just like job and friends, and like what else can I be doing to put myself in a better situation or to think more about my future.
Yeah, I didn't know that Coursera had so many free resources. I would definitely love to look into it, but definitely a lot of free time and trying to do new things as well. And how about you?
Yeah, so I think myself as well, I count myself lucky because as a graduate student, I think we're sort of blanketly protected. The professors have to worry about this. And as well, I'm able to work from home because, for my research, you can sort of switch between doing experiment and sort of doing analysis. So I've been very lucky about that. But as Vidya said, also sort of looking outside, and especially the beautiful kingdom of Swaziland, you can sort of see how much lucky you are because they don't even have the infrastructure to be able to work from home. So if you're talking about even for schools, even they're trying to think about this problem is like very, very big. So I very definitely count myself like and sort of think about as well, like what kind of impact can we make in the future and sort of those kind of realms if the opportunity presents itself. Yeah.
Definitely, like comparing our circumstances with those maybe in our home country can be a stark contrast and remind us, yes, of how lucky we are and how we can also move our perspective from more on ourselves into how we can benefit society. And thank you so much for sharing that. It's been great to kind of hear your perspectives, and we would also invite all the students to check us more out on like the iFGLI platform. And Erica, do you want to talk more about that maybe? About maybe what the future plans for iFGLI are?
Yeah, so right now we just have a group mate, but hopefully in the future we'll have an Instagram account, a Facebook account where like we will post more events like this because I love this. Thank you so much for sharing all your experiences, Tulani and Vidya. I think you have like very different perspectives, but like I learned a lot from both of you, and I hope like everyone here also got something from you both. And we also have the recording, so more people will be able to rewatch this if they want to see like, oh, what did he say about this, or what did she say about this other thing, right? So this is great. The technology is great, and they know, like people here know that they can reach out to you whenever they want on PennFLASH, because this is like an iFGLI and PennFLASH event. I think Lisa can talk more about that. But yeah, in the future, we will hope to plan more events for iFGLI, and we'll post them on the group chat. So I'm gonna send the link again on the chat box, so if you wanna join. Lisa.
Thank you so much for putting this together. It's really helpful. I wish I had this when I was a student and sort of be able to form that community, but it's not too late yet. So I really appreciate all you guys are doing, putting this together and bringing the community together.
Thank you. Thank you, Tulani. Thank you, Vidya. Thank you to our lovely student moderators, Erica and TG. We're going to send more information via email about how to join PennFLASH. We hope that this conversation can continue there. We encourage our students to take all of the advice shared today to heart, to reach out and ask for mentorship and to stay in touch. I'll pass it on to Toys.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for sharing. I did learn a lot. I was able to take some notes. Before we go, I just wanted to bring Brandy on. If she could just share the link just to say that she is able to help anyone that wants to join PennFLASH. Brandy, would you mind just saying a word, please?
Yeah, PennFLASH has been mentioned a lot during this event, which is super exciting. But just to be clear for anyone who isn't aware, PennFLASH is a place of curated alumni who are compassionate to the FGLI experience, who either identify as FGLI or are FGLI adjacent or are FGLI allies. FGLI stands for First Generation Low Income Identity, and it's just a place to practice and develop your networking skills, to build your social capital in a way that is less intimidating and less high stakes than QuakerNet or LinkedIn or a real life networking event, just because here are people who are more compassionate to the FGLI experience and understand that being FGLI means that you come from an environment that doesn't necessarily have the social connections or the social capital that a lot of our peers at Ivy League institutions have, or higher education institutions have. I think someone just dropped the link in the chat, so that's super great. I work with Toys on the PennFLASH program, so if you have any questions, you can also reach out to me. It was a pleasure listening to both of you tell us about your experiences. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Brandy. And finally, I know we're at the end at 1 o'clock. I just wanted to bring Valerie de Cruz on just to give the final word and farewell. Go ahead, Valerie. And Valerie, you are muted. Please unmute.
So wonderful to meet both of you, Tulani and Vidya, on the call. Thank you so much. Your insights were so on point. And I'm going to take some of these insights as I'm mentoring and coaching students. Erica and TG, you continue to impress me with your leadership. And finally, Toyce and Lisette, thank you so much for all of the guidance you're providing to so many students on campus. We are so grateful to have you as part of our team. And then to all of the alums who joined, thank you for joining. And I look forward to more programs. Take care.
Thank you all. Thank you all. You'll get information about our next one on March 26th with Bigly in Tech. So watch out for that email with all that rich information about how to stay in touch and how to continue engaging with our programs. All right, well, I'll let folks go. I know that we're a little over time, not too much. Folks are welcome to stay and mingle with one another here for a few more minutes. But if you do have to go, please feel free to leave the Zoom now.